Welcome into this episode of Automotive Insiders. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Great to have you back listening again with us. Sustainability reporting is evolving rapidly, and for auto suppliers, the road ahead is increasingly complicated. With a growing patchwork of state by state regulations, global reporting frameworks, and inconsistent federal guidance, the challenge isn't just about what to report, but where to begin. Today, we explore the shifting landscape of sustainability disclosure. How can suppliers navigate a fragmented system when California, Texas, and other states are moving in different directions? What happens when compliance requirements conflict or when reporting expectations vary across customers, regions, and agencies? And joining me is someone who understands the legal, operational, and strategic realities of ESG reporting from every angle. He's from Steptoe and Johnson, and he's Randy Whitlatch. He'll unpack how suppliers can remain compliant, credible, and competitive amid mounting regulatory and sustainability pressures, both in the U.S. and around the world. This episode of Automotive Insiders just ahead of the MEMA Original Equipment Suppliers Annual Conference, which takes place November 19th in Detroit. Here's Randy Whitlatch on Automotive Insiders. Randy, pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to having you, of course, at the annual conference, November 19th, at just after 12 noon, the state of affairs, how sustainable is our current reporting environment. And what we want to do is talk a little bit about that sustainability from multiple levels. And you're going to be on a panel talking about that next week. But let's provide a bit of an overview. Give me the current state of affairs and maybe a legal framework overview around sustainability.
Yeah, so really the word that comes to mind and the word that I always use, and it's unfortunate, but it's patchwork. Really right now where we find ourselves in the sustainability space, or really the larger ESG space, is in a fragmented environment. And what I mean by that is you have, federal, not a real consistent federal framework,
Right.
combining with various states, that are, say, pro sustainability versus what you might just roughly call anti-sustainability, competing with each other. And then, of course, you've got, other countries and other jurisdictions on top of that. And then beyond that, you have other players and other constituents that are active in this space, and they're not to be overlooked. And that is, certainly your contractual partners within the supply chain and, consumers, right? And so you've got, greenwashing claims that are out there that are also to be considered, and thought about when you're figuring out how to be reporting. And you've got securities requirements that plaintiffs and plaintiffs' counsels are looking at. And so now, actually, recently, you've got competitors coming at you, using sustainability claims and marketing claims to try to, claim unfair trade or unfair competition. So the long and the short of it is the reporting requirements, and the reporting regimes that we're all, subject to. There's really an overlay of other players, and it's a patchwork right now.
So given that, with the absence of a consistent federal framework, as you say, and conflicting state level laws, California versus Texas, that's complicating compliance for auto suppliers, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a major complication because, the lack of a consistent federal baseline means you have to build flexible infrastructure that can accommodate these state overlays. I mean, that adds cost, complexity, timing risk. I mean, rather than one system you might otherwise design.
And around suppliers being legally exposed, are they, I guess, legally exposed if they comply with one state sustainability requirement but fall short in another? If so, how do they manage that risk?
Well, the short answer to your question is yes. I mean, there is legal exposure and practical risk. I mean, even if you're compliant in one jurisdiction, you may not be compliant in another. Um, and they're, in addition to just not being compliant in another, I mean, as I sort of alluded to, you may find yourself at odds in another. And so something the recipe's there. We haven't quite seen any cases or regulatory actions yet for, say, complying with California's law, but another jurisdiction or another authority taking action because you're complying with say California's law. But the recipe's there. So while there's no guarantee a state, one state is going to prosecute you, you can't assume because we complied in one state, we're going to just be fine everywhere. The prudent approach really is to assume that you have to assume multiple state exposures and build the system accordingly.
Good advice for anybody. How are enforcement mechanisms shaping up at the state or federal level? And should suppliers expect legal penalties for noncompliance anytime soon?
Well, so enforcement is still in somewhat of a nascent stage, but the trend is clearly toward more enforcement, higher visible, higher visibility,
Hmm.
scrutiny, and larger potential consequences. For example, with state enforcement under California's SB 253, SB 261, the relevant California authority, which is the California Air Resources Board, is in rulemaking and pre-rulemaking phases, and you know deadlines for initial disclosure have been set, at least tentatively for June 30th, 2026. And so typically the enforcement, and that's just one example, but that's kind of typical. And so, the federal framework is less prescriptive, even less prescriptive right now. And so usually enforcement itself lags. It doesn't lead rulemaking. But my recommendation is, treat enforcement is likely increasing in the near term. I mean, it's not going to be long. The best practice is to build readiness now, whether it's data controls, disclosures. I mean, rather than hoping enforcement will be either subject to some sort of a grace period or phase in, or maybe just won't even happen. The best practice is to treat it as increasing in the near term.
Just a few more things. Do you foresee legal challenges or pushback to some of the state laws?
I do, and in fact, we've already seen some. There's already been legal challenge or ongoing legal challenge to California's laws.
Hmm.
There's also been legal challenge to, and I'll take it outside of the automotive context specifically for a minute. There's already been legal challenges to some of Minnesota's laws that purport to regulate supply chains generally, whether it's based on extraterritoriality or First Amendment challenge or other constitutional challenge. Um, there are going to be legal challenges and pushback. And what I think the net effect of that could be, although, under the current administration, it's not totally clear, but I think that could ultimately accelerate federal standardization.
Interesting. It's a complicated world when you look at the legal, operational, strategic perspectives. Suppliers are navigating overlapping demands, right? Customers, states, agencies,
Yes,
international stakeholders. There's a
yes.
minefield of issues here, Randy.
You're right. It is a minefield, and you've nailed it. I mean, that really is the environment we're facing. And, even if there is an increase in, standardization from the federal level, it's still going to be, even within the federal government, a bit of a patchwork because, the FTC and the DOJ might not have the same sensibilities or goals or angles that, say, the EPA might have, right? And so you're still going to have um, this minefield and patchwork. And so, it begs the question, well, what do you do? And how do you manage that if you're a supplier? One of our, in the automotive industry or really any supplier faced with this challenge in the supply chain space. And that is, you've got to do a step-by-step risk assessment. And you do have to do it proactively and thoughtfully, and really just scope out the risk that faces you, whether it's environmental risk, social risk, governance risk, customer OEM pressure, reputational litigation risk that I was talking about. So, consumers or investors, you have to take all those risks and really build out a matrix and figure out a way to comply. And it can be done, but you just have to do it in a thoughtful, methodical way and proactive way.
And give me just a word here on Steptoe and Johnson and how you can help
Yeah,
suppliers.
yeah, sure. So Steptoe Johnson is a national firm, 400, about a 400 lawyer national firm. And, I am the team leader of our, supply chain group. And the supply chain group is, it's comprehensive. And so we assist companies with whatever they need, really, from soup to nuts, so to speak, within the supply chain space. And from an automotive standpoint, several of us within the group, including myself, have significant experience assisting specifically tier one and tier two automotive parts manufacturers and suppliers in that space. And so we're really built to be comprehensively focused. So whether you need ESG or sustainability related service, whether you need supply contract or force majeure related service, dispute resolution service, antitrust, securities, cybersecurity, really anything that arises or can arise within that supply chain space, we are focused on. And of course, we do other things for other industries. We're a full service law firm, but with respect to supply chain and the automotive industry, that's where we sit.
Well, you've heard his story here today. Next week, our annual conference attendees will also hear it. Randy Whitlatch will be on stage talking about the state of affairs. How sustainable is our current reporting environment? November 19th in Detroit at the Suburban Collection Showplace. Randy, thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again to my guest, Randy Whitlatch of Steptoe and Johnson. And be sure to see Randy on stage at the MEMA Original Equipment Suppliers Annual Conference, November 19th in the Detroit area, where he'll be talking about sustainability and our current reporting environment. I'm your host, Jason Stein. We'll see you again next time.